Alright, so today we're going to make challah two ways. One is going to be a traditional 3-braid loaf, and the other is going to be a round challah. So what is challah? Challah is a sweet, slightly eggy bread traditionally eaten by Jewish people on the Sabbath. And really every other Jewish holiday too, it seems at least. So you probably recognize challah for its signature braided look. That or challah French toast, either one, they're both very popular. But challah also comes in many different shapes, sizes, even flavors. We got round challah, we got dinner roll challah, we got 3-braid, 4-braid, 6-braid challah. There's cinnamon raisin challah, there's chocolate chip challah, there's garlic onion challah. You get the idea, there's a lot of different types of challah. The point of all this is that challah is a super delicious bread, whether it's Friday or, any other day of the week. It's super easy to make. Really the only technical, kind of like a little more challenging part is the braiding. Folding the dough in a certain way to make that beautiful classic challah. This is my invisible challah. And I've also learned that I am myself braid challenged just from, having made this video. I'm definitely one of those people. However, I'm very confident that you will not be one of those people with a little practice, because if I was able to do it, so are you. All right, I'm done here. Let's bake. These are all the ingredients we'll use today. Our wet ingredients include honey, eggs, oil, and water, which is not shown. Then the dry ingredients are salt, all-purpose flour, and instant yeast. Instant yeast is what's going to make our bread rise. Two popular yeasts for home bakers include instant and active dry yeast. Both yeasts contain tiny granules of dormant active cultures that come alive once mixed with other ingredients. Active dry needs to be added to water before it's mixed into the dough, while instant yeast can be mixed in directly. Both are fine, but today we're going to be using instant yeast. The last ingredient we need to get ready is our water. We're aiming for a water temp of 110 degrees Fahrenheit or 43 degrees Celsius. Ensuring that the water is at this temperature will keep the dough warm and allow our little yeasties to flourish. Alright, here's my super legit way of measuring water. I place a scale in the sink, a cup on top, and use my thermometer pen to measure the temperature of the water as it comes out the faucet. Once the water is at the correct temperature, start shooting some into the cup bit by bit until you get the proper weight. So now we need to put all the wet ingredients in the mixer. To the bowl of a stand mixer, add the wet ingredients first and then the dry. Adding the wet ingredients before the dry ensures that our dough hook will be able to pick everything up when it's mixing. With the dry ingredients atop the wet, pop the bowl in the stand mixer and attach the dough hook. Yeah. I should mention it's totally possible to do this all by hand, but the stand mixer really does make things like a heck of a lot easier. To start off, you're going to want to set that stand mixer to stir. This initial mixing should take about 8 to 10 minutes. It's going to ensure proper gluten formation, so make sure you do it. After a couple minutes, if necessary, scrape anything stuck to the sides of the mixing bowl back down. It's also totally normal for the dough to climb the hook while it's mixing, so if this happens, just stop the mixer and push it back down. Okay, after the initial mix, once the dough has kind of come together, bump the mixer speed up a level to level 2 and continue mixing for another 3 to 4 minutes. Remove the dough from the mixer and plop it onto the countertop. It shouldn't be very sticky. Shape the dough into a little ball, then pop it back in the mixing bowl. Cover the bowl with plastic wrap so it doesn't dry out, then set that aside for 2 hours. In this stage, the yeast will help the dough rise and also develop in flavor. Now we play the waiting game. I like to use the downtime to clean up and set up my workspace for the next step. 2 hours later, the dough should be roughly doubled in size and sort of supple to the touch. Plop the dough onto a lightly floured countertop and use your hands and fingers to sort of press the dough down. We're really trying to remove as much air from the dough as possible, so press that thing out. This next step will be determined by the shape that you'd like your final challah to be. For a classic 3-braid challah, divide the dough into, 3 equal parts. I like to measure the dough by weight instead of by eye just because, it's more accurate. Once the dough is divided by weight, use your hands to shape each piece of dough into a small ball. Well, either that or sort of like a small Twinkie. It really doesn't matter, you'll see in a second. Once shaped, let these small pieces of dough rest under some plastic wrap for about 10 minutes. This is going to allow the gluten to relax and make the pieces easier to roll out. And that's just a second batch of challah that I made off camera for the round challah, but first let's stick to this 3-braid. Grab a piece of dough and plop it in the middle of your work surface. Use one hand to roll the middle of the dough to create sort of this dumbbell looking shape. From here, place one hand on each of those bulbous pieces, then roll them outwards in sort of a pulling motion. We're going for 3 even strands about 20 inches or 50 centimeters long. More or less. Don't stress about the exact length, just make sure that they're even. Line the strands up and pinch the top together like so. Now, make a simple braid by placing an outside piece of dough over the middle piece. Do the same thing on the other side, placing the other outside piece over the new middle piece. Congratulations, the braid is now started. Rinse and repeat until you run through the length of the dough. So once braided up completely, pinch the ends together and tuck that tip under the loaf. Do the same at the top of the loaf too. Pinch and tuck, then carefully support the loaf as you move it onto a sheet tray. Now if you don't have Silpat mats, make sure that the tinfoil or the parchment is nice and lubed up with oil. Coat a piece of plastic wrap with the oil, then drape that over the loaf and set it aside. Okay, now let's do a round challah. For a simple 4 braid round challah, we need 4 pieces of dough. Just roll those out like we did our last loaf. To shape, start by laying 2 strands of dough next to each other, then lay the other 2 strands across the top. Place one horizontal strand over the first vertical strand and the other under. Cross each pair of strands sort of like I'm doing here, and continue to do that the rest of the way. Once you get to a point where you can't cross no mo, tuck these strands under the loaf. Boom, round challah. Transfer that golden, glorious dough ball onto a sheet tray, and again, cover with oiled plastic wrap. We need to let these precious loavi rest and proof for 1.5 to 2 hours. 15 minutes before the loaves are finished proofing, make an egg wash by combining 2 whole eggs and water. And I once heard that egg wash should be the consistency of cream, and now I live and die by that phrase, so go for something like that. Preheat the oven to 375 degrees Fahrenheit or 190 Celsius, then orient one rack on the lower third of the oven and the other on top. Now we need to brush these beauties down with the egg wash to give them that classic challah sheen. We're going to coat each challah one time, then let it sit out for 5 to 10 minutes, and then we're going to hit it a second time. If you'd like to add toppings to your challah, sprinkle them on after the second coating of egg wash. Here I got me some crunchy sea salt. It's not too tradish, but I do think it looks pretty clean, so, don't let social constructs define your challah. The second loaf is just getting a shower of sesame and poppy seeds. Tight, we made it. Alright, so pop your challah in the oven for 25 to 30 minutes. And if your oven's kind of like mine and you're going to put 2 big trays in the oven, I'm actually going to flip these halfway through. So set a timer now, 25 to 30 minutes, maybe a little less, maybe a little more, and then flip them, work the oven here. We're trying to make sure that the heat gets distributed evenly and it's coming from the bottom. So obviously the bottom is going to get a little more love than the top. So you got to turn, you got to flip, you got to make it work. So that's what I'll be doing. After time in the oven, once plumped, shiny, and golden brown, the challah needs to cool for at least an hour. So place the challah on a metal rack, it'll help speed this process up. Believe it or not, you'll actually lose out on flavor and sort of mess with the bread's texture if you cut into the loaf too early, so resist the urge. I have faith in you. Okay, we made it. Once the bread is at room temperature, feel free to slice and destroy. Who's ready for a challah fun fact? Round challah is especially prominent during Rosh Hashanah or the Jewish New Year. The round shape is said to represent the cyclical nature of the year. It's also sometimes served with raisins and a little extra sweetener to symbolize a sweet year to come. Let's slice into this boyo and see what his insides look like. Okay, nice. A nice little tight crumb. Looks like we have that yellowish challah color that's showing through. I'll go ahead and just pat myself on the back right here. If you know me, you know I'm not much of a sweets guy, but this time I had some amazing local honey in my larder, so honey butter challah it is. That is a nap on a slice of bread right there. Challah brings back memories of a lot of different things. So my parents are divorced, so I actually grew up in 2 separate households, both of which were sort of semi-culturally Jewish. We definitely didn't celebrate like the Sabbath every Friday. Challah was always plopped on the table in one way or another during like special Jewish holidays. My favorite way to eat challah is probably just by taking one of these fat lumpy braids, ripping it off, then maybe dipping it in a little bit of salt. Probably not the most healthy practice, but I'm still breathing, I'm here. And I hope this video was helpful for you challah curious individuals. Be sure to like the video if it was helpful, sub to the channel for more videos, and I will see you next week. Shana Tova, mother forkers. That means Happy New Year in Hebrew, I think.